Good morning, patriots and freedom-loving Americans. Welcome back to the finish line. The wedge in MAGA continues to deepen. There are lots of philosophical disagreements going on, and they threaten to derail not only Trump's presidency, but our chances in the midterms. Trump was on the news the other day talking about how J.D. Vance disagrees with the war effort. And that seems to be pretty clear since J.D. Vance hasn't made any comments about it. He's largely stayed out of this whole Iranian war. And it is very politically beneficial for him to do so if he seeks to run in the 2028 Republican primaries. Because Vance was this guy that Trump picked to show that he could appeal to the base. Because Trump, being a billionaire, coming from New York City, having these ties to celebrities and the super influential, wasn't an appealing candidate without someone to reinforce that he fights for the common people, that he fights for the base. And Vance was this candidate that was put in as to show like, hey, Trump's the real deal. He's speaking to these people who think that they're forgotten. And this is kind of the divide again in the Republican Party between the neoconservatives and the paleoconservatives. And the neoconservatives tend to be elitist, richer. And Trump, during the campaign, wanted to distance himself with those people. What was interesting, and we'll talk about later at the end of the show, is that a lot of these neocons went out and endorsed Kamala Harris because Trump's message was so scary to them. We talked about how neocons prioritize lots of foreign intervention and conflicts, economic globalization through free trade and legal immigration. For a lot of different means. Some of the more sinister ones are pro selling out our country, while some other ones are just pro economic success, and there's ties to corporations and big business, and they want to see that sector do well. Even though the more ideological ones are more sinister, as I said. And Trump ran this campaign, as I keep saying over and over again, to the base. And now, since June of last year, he's listening to these people, elitist, out-of-touch Washington politicians like Lindsey Graham, who nobody likes, that are telling us to send our sons and daughters to war in the Middle East. This Lindsey Graham is crazy. He was on the news the other day talking about a permanent defense agreement with Saudi Arabia, that we could protect them forever. And this is just so out of touch with what the American people wants. And you can tell that the people that are originally in his cabinet, who were supposed to appeal to the base, are mad. J.D. Vance hasn't said anything. Tulsi Gabbard hasn't said anything. Tulsi Gabbard is literally the one who is selling "No War with Iran" t-shirts during Trump's campaign, and was literally proponing that message the entire time, saying, if you vote for Trump, we'll stay out of war with Iran. And it's just complete crap. And I think the American people are losing hope in Trump's presidency, especially his base. The MAGA numbers are dwindling. And as I've talked about, I think the Democrats are going to win the midterms. And if they do so, it's likely that they're going to impeach Trump for these things. If they do impeach Trump, we know that Vance is going to be the president. And, I'm not completely against that. I think Vance, at this point, I don't agree with everything he says. He's actually kind of liberal on some economic issues that I think would be disastrous. But I think he's better than Trump, honestly, ideologically now. He doesn't support these wars in the Middle East. He's an isolationist. I like that. He's pro-high tariffs, and he's pro-blocking mass immigration. He was on record in the campaign saying, I'm not just against illegal immigration, I'm against legal immigration because it's hurting our workforce, it's hurting our people, it's hurting our culture. All those things are true. And I think he's a little bit more ideologically consistent than Trump. Trump's this guy that I feel like tries a bunch of different things. He doesn't seem very ideological. He seems pragmatic. He's kind of a deal maker. I think it comes from his time in business. He's not very ideological. I don't think he's the kind of guy to read philosophy, read books about economics and whatnot, and I think J.D. Vance is. J.D. Vance has talked about a lot of writings that he has liked, and he even wrote his own book, Hillbilly Elegy, which was fantastic. And I think J.D. Vance, although he's not perfect, is a little bit more ideologically consistent than Trump. And so if Trump was to be impeached, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. And I'm not telling you to vote Democrat in the midterms, because that's kind of playing with fire, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen. And Republicans, voting for Republicans, even though they're not great, they're betraying us on a lot of things, they're still a lot better than the Democratic Party, which is just completely horrible. So don't listen to Nick Fuentes telling you to vote Democrat. I think he's just venting his frustrations. I understand where he's coming from, but his ideas aren't good. He often comes from emotion, and that's just not something I support. This made me emotional, though. Today, Trump tells House Republicans to tone down talks of mass deportations. Now, I guess we're focusing on getting the criminals out. No, that's not why I voted for you, Mr. Trump. I voted for these mass deportations. Joe Biden let in millions of undocumented immigrants. They're not only taking jobs, they're watering down the culture, plus this crime that they're bringing. And if we want to have a country, if we want to have a serious country, I should say, we need to, as I've said time and time again on this show, make sure that we are united. We need to be one people, one language, one culture, one heritage, one tradition. And this is what those mass deportations were going to help lead to. And I thought J.D. Vance's influence would eventually swing Trump over to maybe pushing through stricter limits on immigration. But Trump now, as I said, is listening to these crazy people, these neocons that are telling him, yeah, let's get more H-1B visas. Let's bring more people into the country. And I think also Trump's toning down the talk of mass deportations to help him in the midterms after the killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. But it's really not helping anyone. It's really a dumb strategy. He keeps digging his feet in the ground instead of listening to reason. I don't know any Democrats that would swing over and vote Republican, even if he does tone down mass deportation, because they hate the guy. They hate the guy, everything he does. They do the opposite of everything he says. He's not converting anybody that way. Now, who he could convert are far-right people that are skeptical of Trump, and he could say, I am making good on my promises. See, I am doing what you voted for me for. That would mobilize people to go out and vote in the midterms. There are no left-wing Democrats that are going to do so. And so I hate just sitting here every day. When I started a political show, when I wanted to do that, I thought it was going to be pro-Trump, rah-rah, I don't like doing this. But every day, I just see him bury himself over and over again. It's embarrassing to watch. I'm embarrassed that, I supported him so much. I would do it again, obviously, over Kamala Harris, but it's just not a good situation. It puts us in a bad situation for the midterms, and the next election is just a total crapshoot. Next, could a failed bombing in New York City be a false flag? So I don't know if you know about this situation. I'm a little late on reporting it, but it's been in my feed lately, and I think we should swing back and look at it. So on March 7th, that's 4 days ago, there was a failed bombing in New York City. So what happened was there was a small political demonstration called Stop the Islamic Takeover of New York City. And this guy that leads it, Jake Lang, I'm sure you've seen him, is constantly stirring up violence, anger, different cities. He was in Dearborn, Michigan. He likes to go to places where there's a large Muslim population and then yell through a megaphone. And I've seen videos of him beating a Quran with bacon, obviously because they don't eat bacon, and just being extremely provocative. Obviously, I want to stop the Islamic takeover of New York City, but this guy is a violence inciter. He was at January 6th beating cops, so now there's suspicion that this guy is actually working for Israel to stir up hatred to Muslims, so Muslims retaliate, and it makes U.S. people want to go to war more in the Middle East. Because what happens at this protest is there was a counter-protest that was organized, and there was a Muslim that lit and threw a small homemade explosive device into the crowd, and another device ignited soon after, but they didn't explode, and the suspects were detained. But the media jumps onto these stories. Oh, there's a terrorist attack and whatnot. And yes, I completely agree. These people are disgusting that threw the bombs. And a lot of Muslims are like this. I mean, this is a really common theme. They're violent. Almost all the terrorist attacks are done by Muslims. Why people are skeptical of this is that Jake Lang, the head of the Stop the Islamic Takeover of New York City, was seen in Jerusalem. There's a picture of him kissing the wall. And so people are, suspect that he has ties to Israel, and he's trying to incite Muslim violence to make us want to go to war over there and be like, yeah, let's get these Muslims. I see the point. This guy is Jewish. He has also been at anti-Israel protests too. There is an argument that can be made that he is a Fed. I don't think it's super strong, but I think there's some credence to that. It is weird that he was kissing the wall in Jerusalem and taking part in a ceremony over there. His mother is an Ashkenazi Jew. He could have changed his mind about these things. There's a lot of Jewish people that are anti-Israel. I don't think there's enough evidence to say he's a Fed. It would make sense, but I think the lesson from this story that I want to take is that I hate people that do this, like Jake Lang, because they stir up violence, they make our side look violent, and they create violence. Obviously, the Islamic people are completely at fault for the bomb thing, but we don't need this happening. You don't need to go around with the Quran and slap bacon into it and get into these big fights in the street, because violence is what the deep state wants to do to take more control. That's what they did with the civil rights movement in the 60s. They supported all these giant protests where they were throwing bombs and burning down buildings and whatnot so that they can continue to take more and more power. People are too violent to govern themselves. We need to step in. The way that we do this, the way that we stop the Islamic takeover of New York City is through democratic means. It's what I'm doing. It's reaching out to people, getting this ideology going, and supporting candidates that are going to do this, because violence never gets you anywhere, makes our side look stupid, it's anti-Christian, and it's not going to help anybody. All right, back to the Epstein investigation. Last time we talked about Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, who was a highly influential businessman and was suspected of being a triple agent. There's a lot of evidence. He worked for British M16, Russia's KGB, Israel's Mossad, that one being the most obvious. I mean, if you don't think Robert Maxwell worked for the Mossad, you have something wrong with you. Those were very interesting connections, and I know that a lot of people, when they approach the Epstein subject, go straight into the meat, the flight logs, who's on the list, who did what to who, and, kind of the gross, nastiest details of it. What I'm doing is I'm establishing the connections that he had, how he got there, who he was working for. This is all for a reason, because it's all going to make sense once we get to the heart of everything. Shortly before Robert Maxwell's death, he had introduced Ghislaine and Jeffrey Epstein to each other. They started dating, and this is a notable turning point in the story, because it is all uphill from here for Epstein. Lots of connections. February 25th, 1993 is when Epstein first enters the White House. It was very shortly after Bill Clinton became president, and he visited the White House 7 times during Bill Clinton's presidency. We have a photo of him on September 29th, 1993, when he visited the White House for a donor reception for donors to White House renovations. And he gave a lot of money to Bill Clinton throughout his presidency. And I think this is interesting, because at this point, he starts becoming a donor to politicians. And so I made a list of politicians that he gave to, mostly Democrats, but also Republicans too. Here they are. Bill Clinton, this is under Democrats, Chuck Schumer, John Kerry, Joe Lieberman, Jeff Bingaman, Richard Gephardt, John Glenn, Dan Glickman, and Bill Richardson. Republicans, Al D'Amato, Bob Dole, John Kasich, Phil Gramm, Rick Lazio, and Rudy Boschwitz. So I thought to myself when I first looked at this, why would he give money to both Democrats and Republicans? I was trying to nail him down on an ideology. I was like, this is interesting. But then you have to remember that Democrats and Republicans aren't always as far apart as it seems. And we've talked about this on the show, that there's different groups of Republicans. So I've said that there's neoconservatives and paleoconservatives. Neoconservatives being the pro-interventionist, pro-free trade and globalization, pro-immigration wing of the Republican Party. And then also the paleoconservatives, where we fall, the America First side, that's more anti-immigration, anti-war, pro-tariff. Same thing exists on the Democratic Party. There's the neoliberals. Neoliberals are also pro-free trade, pro-immigration, pro-intervention, and they agree with neoconservatives on these issues. They just disagree on some other social issues. Neoconservatives tend to be more socially conservative, while neoliberals more socially liberal. There's also paleoliberals. There's liberals that believe in tariffs. There's liberals that want to limit immigration. And there are liberals that are less interventionist, that don't want us to get in wars. So for a long time in American politics, there was called the neoliberal neoconservative consensus. And it was that the widest group of politicians were either neoliberal or neoconservative. If you were a Republican, you were probably a neoconservative. If you were a liberal, you were probably a neoliberal. And that's why there wasn't a lot of conflict at that time. You notice that Congress was more bipartisan. And it's because they agreed widely on these three issues, being super pro-intervention, pro-immigration, and pro-free trade. And there wasn't that much divergence from that. And these other voices that came up were considered radicals on both sides. Now that framework has collapsed, and Trump really helped collapse that, because it seemed when he first campaigned that he was going against this consensus. Now it seems like he's going into it, but we already talked about that. But I looked at these candidates, and they share one thing in common. All these Democrats he supported and all the Republicans he supported are pro-Israel. And that was the only thing that they had in common. And I think that's pretty interesting. With the Israel connections we've already laid down, his connection to Edgar Bronfman, leader of the World Jewish Congress, his connections to Robert Maxwell, the Mossad agent, seems pretty clear. Also, another commonality of 15 of the 16 of these candidates were pro-free trade, pro-economic globalization. And the pro-Israel stance and the pro-economic globalization thing usually go hand in hand. They were also all highly educated elitist candidates. So it's just kind of funny because my audience watching the show, I know your political views. These are the worst possible candidates, like possible. These are the guys we hate. Like the let's be bipartisan, like corrupt ass, educated people that are super high up in Washington, make a bunch of money, throw our money at Israel, don't care about our country at all, take down the tariffs. Let's trade with everyone. Let's let China just rip us off. These are the guys that Epstein donated to. And it's just hilarious because Epstein is literally the common enemy of civilization right now. And it's just really funny. And we've talked about this before. It's interesting. The people that are usually very pro-Zionist, the pro-Zionist Jewish people, this again is not an attack on Jewish people. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in racism. I like judging people as individuals. There is a huge group of Zionist Jewish people, people that feel the connection to their Jewish homeland, who are super pro-nationalism for their state, but for the rest of everybody else, want global government, do not like that anybody else has their own country. And I'm not just talking out of my ass. You can watch the other show. I'll link the episode where I talk about this, that these same Zionist people are the ones that give to European reunification, give to free trade causes, love mass immigration, this type of thing. So it's clear that Epstein had an agenda, and we are going to continue to trace that throughout the rest of the show. All right, usually on Wednesdays, we do a look at the top 10, and I give my expert reaction on it. But this week, it's looking a little redundant, and I think that's going to be the case usually. So we might move the top 10 feature to every other week, or maybe once every month. But I found something that I thought was a little more intriguing, and a little bit Matt Walsh-like, actually. I was surfing through YouTube one day, and I got a suggestion that I should take an anti-racist training course. And I mean, a lot of people have called me racist, so maybe there is something to that. I don't think I'm racist. I don't want to be, but maybe I need to take a course to sort my issues out, and maybe I should take the suggestion. So that's what we're going to start today, is a little anti-racist training course. So fellow America Firsters, I hope you join me in this noble pursuit. So let me pull that up right now. All right, let's begin.
Hi. What do you see? Who am I? Do you see a woman?
Yes.
Or do you see a
black person?
And if you do see a black woman,
did I get it right, guys?
What does that mean to you?
I don't know, that you're a black person.
Racism exists in every level of society, from individuals to the highest social structures.
Really?
I challenge you to become anti-racist.
I accept it.
Yes, you.
Me?
How will you do this? By watching me, you will be able to recognize the different categories of racism and racial discrimination, understand the historical impact and ongoing legacy of racism in Canada and white privilege, identify racial discrimination and harassment in different spheres of society, and conceive the consequences of racism. Pretty heavy stuff, but there's a good ending for you.
Yes.
After you learn all this, you get to apply your knowledge. I'll show you what to do against racism, the benefits of living in a society without racism, and how to commit to being anti-racist.
I do. I commit to being the #1 warrior of anti-racism. I'm going to lead the charge, guys. I'm not joking.
Come, let's begin. Number 1, what is race? The concept of race is often linked to a person's physical characteristics such as skin color, nose shape, eye shape, hair texture, and others. However, race does not exist.
What?
You heard that right. Race does not exist.
Pretty sure it does.
Many scientists have shown that classification by race has no legitimate biological basis. There is only the human race. You see, we're really all one.
It doesn't look like it from the picture.
Why is race still talked about?
Let's be honest, guys.
We talk about race because people attribute traits and characteristics to people based on how they perceive them because of the color of their skin. Giving meaning to biological characteristics to identify people is to assign them to a general category of people or groups.
So we're against that?
This is called the process of racialization. Number 2, racialization. Racialization is the process of the social construction of race that allows for the domination of one group over another, whereby societies view races as different and unequal socially, economically, and politically. The process of racialization is therefore intended to differentiate, inferiorize, and exclude those who are considered non-white.
I mean,
it should be noted that the process of racialization usually excludes white people, at least in Canada.
Oh.
Whites are considered the norm.
Yeah, maybe because they are like the founders of the country. I don't know.
The
I'm sorry, I
representation
can't
of
say
all
that.
humanity,
Just keep watching.
while non-whites are perceived as different, exceptions, particularities. Number 3, racism.
They literally
What
are.
is racism? Racism is defined as a form of prejudice that includes implicit or explicit beliefs, false assumptions, and ideologies of superiority towards one racial group over another. Racism can be explicit or implicit, meaning that it can be manifested either directly or indirectly. Examples of explicit racism are racist comments, threats of physical violence, and actual violence against a racialized person. And racist cyberbullying through information technology and social networks like Facebook, Twitter, and racist websites.
Those are racist websites.
Implicit racism are racial microaggressions. They are brief, verbal, or nonverbal behavioral and environmental everyday indignities that may appear trivial, intentional, or unintentional, which communicate racially hostile, derogatory, or negative insults and remarks to the target person or group.
It's just horrible.
Although these racist behaviors are subtle in nature, they are just as painful for the person experiencing them, especially as it is difficult to prove them. Have you heard any of these statements? I get them all the time. Where are you from? I'm not racist because I have black friends.
True.
Everyone can succeed if they work hard.
True.
By the way, in case you're wondering, I'm from Halifax.
The hell is that?
Number 4, individual or interpersonal racism. Interpersonal racism occurs when our racist beliefs, assumptions, and behaviors, whether implicit or explicit, are embedded in interpersonal interactions. Examples of interpersonal racism include threats and harassment, social exclusion, stigmatization, and unfair treatment.
It's horrible.
One of the most common examples of interpersonal racism is the fact that some white students exclude black students from their work groups.
I've never done
either
that.
because
I've never
they
done
do not
that.
want to work with them because of their skin color, or because they think they are less intelligent. Another very common example of interpersonal racism is that of white parents implicitly or explicitly refusing to allow their children to go out with black youth. Number 5.
Is that true?
Institutional racism. Institutional racism takes place within institutions including schools, governments, and religious institutes. It is policies and practices which claim that all races are treated equally and see equal outcomes, while racialized people are consistently oppressed and disadvantaged by these policies and practices. Number 6. Systemic or structural racism.
How old is this video?
Structural or systemic racism involves racial
3
bias
years.
across institutions,
Oops.
including public and private policies,
I'm locked in,
institutional
guys.
practices,
Sorry.
and cultural representations, among others. It reinforces the unequal treatment of racial groups by systematically privileging the majority racial group and presenting disadvantages for minority racial groups. For example,
Unacceptable.
in Canada, despite efforts for change, the school curriculum is still designed for white middle-class students. This is evident in history classes, for example, which explore Canadian history from a white perspective and fail to give a voice to racial minority groups who also have a place in history, including Indigenous people. You know what I'm talking about. Number
Ooh,
7,
sassy there, okay.
internalized racism. Internalized racism is generally defined as the acceptance and integration of negative beliefs, prejudices, and stereotypes about one's own abilities and values by individuals of a racial group into a dominant racial group.
So boring.
Internalized racism occurs when people who are victims of racism themselves adopt beliefs and behaviors which support the racism they experience. An example is thinking, hey, maybe I am not good enough. It is a major consequence of living in a racist society and experiencing racism. As a result of listening to racist comments, ideas, and thoughts, and having racist experiences, some racialized people end up adhering to the racist views of the dominant group. For example, a manager or team leader who is a member of racialized communities refuses to give rewarding tasks to another racialized person because they have internalized several social prejudices.
I can't believe I didn't know about this.
Communities.
This is happening every
Number
day,
8,
guys, in our
racial
societies.
Profiling. Racial profiling occurs when an authoritarian figure attributes criminal intent and or acts on stereotypical assumptions based on an individual's race, color, ethnicity, and other identity markers. Examples of racial profiling are a police officer who assumes that a person is prone to offending behavior because he or she is Black or Indigenous, or a shop clerk who tells a group of Black youth they cannot enter the shop at the same time, but allows a group of white youth in. Number 9, prejudices. A prejudice is a false or unwarranted and often negative opinion or attitude towards a person or group because they are different. An example is perceiving a person as inferior to themselves because of their race.
Never done that before,
example
honestly.
is a Black woman who walks into a shop and is nicely told, "Ma'am, I think this shop is too expensive for you. I recommend that you go to another shop where the prices
It happens to
are
white
more
trash
affordable."
people too, I'm just saying.
Number 10, racial bias. A bias is an inclination of temperament or perspective, often a judgment or opinion. Bias can be defined as a favorable or unfavorable prejudice to one group or person over another and is often seen as unfair. Implicit biases are biases which are unintentionally activated without the individual's awareness or intentional control. Our implicit biases tend to be more favorable toward our own ethnic group and are difficult to access through introspection. Most individuals have implicit racial biases. That stinks.
Yeah,
Number 11,
I don't think that's true,
white
but
privilege
okay.
and white supremacy. White supremacy is the belief that humans of white races or
Not the
paler
Klan.
complexion are superior to humans belonging to other racial groups. As early as the 19th century, we can find several writings defending this superiority based on studies with scientific pretensions. This ideology is often associated with violent groups or organizations such as those racists called the Ku Klux Klan and others like them. Today, studies tend to talk about white privilege. White people have more advantages in society because of the color of their skin. These advantages are invisible to those who benefit from them. Even though these facts were reported more than 30 years ago, these benefits still exist, without the people who have them really becoming aware of them, because over time, they have become a given. Examples of white privilege are to be widely represented with political power, to be assured that the story represents my group in a majority and positive way, not to be accused of living in a ghetto when you live mainly with whites, to easily find posters, picture books, dolls, or children's magazines representing your group, not to undergo an identity check by the police for no apparent reason, not having to speak or justify yourself on behalf of all members of your group, feeling welcome and normal in most situations related to public, institutional, and social life. So now you know what racism is all about.
We're quitting the show. I'm sorry. This is hit too close to home. I've undergone a radical transformation, and I think I need a couple weeks to think about it. So I need some time, because that is the way that I feel in my heart.